So there we go. The oil level is about a half quart above, right at the orange dip stick. And oil levels right above the, it's about a half a quart over full. That is actually substantially better than what it used to be. I still, to this day, on some of these videos that are about 4 years old, occasionally receive comments from random people who are adamant that if I would just go out and drive the vehicle on the highway. I had somebody point out to me that I needed to drive at 100 miles occasionally. One thing that I've learned with this engine is that I could change the oil right now. I could probably go drive, put 400 miles on it, and by the time I get to my destination, the oil level will be up to this level right here. The car has always been that way. Now, one thing that I have learned that has changed with this driving around in town is that the oil dilution does not occur as quickly. It's counter to the typical narrative that is shared with various people that, well, you just need to go out on the highway and drive it. What we're going to do next is we'll take this on a test drive. I'm going to hook up my my OBDII data reader, and we'll just take a look and see how these injectors are faring. All right, so this is, I was actually curious on this because I have not had the BlueDriver hooked up in quite a while. And those that have had dealt with the injector issue on this vehicle, it manifests in not just a check engine light, but the whole dashboard lighting up. And to the average user, when this occurs, it's difficult to understand exactly what is wrong, because the car is just going nuts. It's not like it's just a simple check engine light is on and you're driving along. They have essentially engineered it so that the average person goes, oh crap, I need to get this in, something majorly is wrong. So the at the time when I had to replace my injectors, what was going on was the code that ends up setting is for the long-term fuel trim being -20 for a certain threshold. And the when I would hook up to this to investigate what was exactly going on, my fuel trims were in the night. When the light was off, it was like -18, -19 to -20. So you can gain a pretty quick understanding. Let's say that light came on once and then went off again, or maybe it didn't come on at all, and you've got a higher mileage CRV Accord with this 1.5 liter turbo engine, and you want to understand if this vehicle is going to be looking at a set of injectors. Well, you can go ahead, you can plug in a code reader like this that maybe provides some basic OBDII data, and if you have issues, you're going to see something far worse than -1.6 or -5.5. You're going to see negative numbers in the teens, and that's going to be a pretty good indication that things are marching in the wrong direction. All right, and then Valvoline extended protection, that is what is going back into this vehicle. That was the oil that was in this vehicle that we just dropped that we're going to be testing. So, yeah, be curious to see how it did, although I'm sure it did fine. But in any case, putting 530 in, that elicits a strong reaction to certain people. And then I've been using 530 in this since it was out of warranty. And then the oil filter, I'll change next service. It only has 4,000 miles on it. I know that elicits a strong reaction. Seems to trigger certain people. But again, most of these oil filters that I'm pulling apart, like in the van, are, even in this car, when I pull them apart, it's not like it's capturing anything. So it can ride another oil change, in my opinion. All right, we're back under here. I like to have a pan that I can kind of see through to see how bad the oil is from the transmission, see if there's like how much metal is in it, that sort of thing. So that is why I'm using the green pan. And so we've got 2 bolts here that need to come out. And if you have not done this, although I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there, this is the drain, and then this is the full plug. So we'll drain it. We'll take the full plug out, and then we'll put this plug back in, and then we'll start filling it up. And when fluid comes out of this, then we know it's full. Although we are probably not straight. This has 34,000 miles on it. As I mentioned earlier, I've always done the fluid changes on this at about 30,000, which is a little bit earlier than what Honda recommends, but I'm trying to keep it alive. So there we are. Okay, as promised, I did an oil sample of our oil for the 2017 Honda CR-V. I used Valvoline Extended Protection 5W30. This oil has been used a couple oil changes at least. This oil's been used for a few oil changes at least. And let's get right into it. The fuel percentage was quite good for this vehicle at 1.3%. So you can see it right here, fuel percent 1.3. If you go across 2.5, 3.3, 5.0, 1.3, 7.3, generally pretty high. This 1.3 I want to highlight quickly at 70,000 miles was an oil change that I did and began to exclusively use premium fuel. And this demonstration was to prove that if on this engine, if you use premium fuel, it would cut down on the oil dilution. I think I kind of laid out earlier my theory on this engine with the oil dilution, so I won't rehash all of that. But for people that really don't believe that or don't think it's true, I really suggest change your oil and then exclusively use premium fuel and test your oil and tell me I'm wrong. So the oil sample itself looked pretty decent. Nothing really stood out. For the iron counts, we have 16. If you go across, it's kind of in line with the typical. I did have an 8 here at 77,000 miles and a 37. This 37 iron count correlated with actually a low fuel dilution amount. And my theory for that is that the prior oil change had a 7.3% fuel dilution in the oil. I was using Mobil 1 0W30. I changed the oil, but when I'm changing the oil between these, I'm not flushing the system out. So I think this test right here was residual iron, residual metal counts that were captured in the next oil sample, because this oil sample was done at 65 and then the next one was done at 70. So they were back-to-back oil samples. No flushing was done. I just captured what had occurred during the previous test. So jumping back over here to our 4,000 mile sample on the 134,000 mile engine. And like I said, everything looks good as far as the metal counts go. I kind of would like to, it would be nice to see these iron counts a little bit lower on my 2011 Grand Caravan, where I've discussed in the video the iron counts. I think that was cut in half. But all things considered, with the fuel entering into the system, it's not a bad number to have. We are... the only thing I want to point out here, so in this is the only problem I really had with this vehicle, is that at 85,000 miles, I had to replace the injectors. And I sort of highlighted that early on in this video where I was discussing the long-term fuel trim. And once my particular problem was the long-term fuel trim was stuck at -20 or above, it was throwing a check engine light along with all these other dash lights, and the nannies quit working. And so long story short, I ordered fuel injectors. I got them in, and that has fixed the problem. And we've had good long-term fuel trim numbers for the last 50,000 miles. I was lucky to get those injectors in when I did, because it was shortly after that they went on back order, and what I was told was they were hard to come by. And even if you came by them and had the dealer install them, it's not cheap. It was, I think the job ranges anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. And that is a fair amount of money to be spending on a 85,000 mile Honda. Like, really, most Honda drivers are not expecting to dump that kind of money into a car at that mileage. So for me, it wasn't a huge deal. I think I paid like $250 for the injectors, but I can understand that it's not a good mark on Honda, to be replacing these injectors so soon. So as far as what else do I want to talk about here? So we have decent metals. I kind of explained why those metals were slightly higher. Fuel percentage is lower. Oh, what I want to point out too is that the vehicle right now is primarily driven in town. Based on these numbers right here that I'm looking at, we put on 4,000 miles in 6 months. So we'll be lucky to put on 10,000 miles in a year, where early on, before 85,000 miles, the car was, we were putting on about 24,000 miles a year. It was primarily driven on the highway, with the cruise control set at 70 miles an hour. And so, as far as what I've experienced with oil dilution puttering around town, is that it occurs much slower, at a slower rate, and in contradiction to when we were driving out on the highway, where it would occur fairly quickly. The oil level would rise within 500 miles. It would be up to the quarter to half inch range, and then whatever would be occurring, the oil level would sort of maintain itself. After the injectors were replaced, it generally was a lot more reliable. That was only a half quart rise, where before there was one time the oil did rise, to about 1 inch above. But I generally personally maintain, like, I would keep track of how much oil rise was occurring and would make sure that the oil was changed when we started to rise above the orange plastic dipstick marker. So oil that I have used in this vehicle has kind of been all over the place. 5W30 Kirkland, I was using that for a little bit. There was 3 oil changes with Pennzoil Platinum. One of those changes, I utilized 0W30, Mobil 1 0W30. And then prior to that, when the vehicle was closer to warranty, I was utilizing the Mobil 1 5W30 or Mobil 1 0W20. So my general thought process on utilizing the 5W30 is that the viscosity range is going to be dropping out of spec because of the oil dilution. And so, having a little bit thicker oil to kind of buffer that fuel dilution is maybe a little better than having a really thin oil and then adding dilution on top of that to make it even thinner. Is it going to make a difference? Probably not a whole lot, but that's what I've been doing. It's, in some ways it's just easier. I have one car that utilizes 5W30 and one that utilizes 0W20, and it's just been easier to run 5W30. So that's what I have been using in this car. So as reliability goes, it's been decent. The only thing I did want to highlight, and I mentioned this earlier, is that a lot of people complain about the head gaskets. And my challenge for you is there anybody out there that primarily uses 91 octane or 89 octane that has had a head gasket issue on the 1.5 liter turbo engine? So this would be, even with the Accords, the Civic, or the CRV. I have not been able to find anybody that when they're utilizing the premium fuel, they have the head gasket issue. Car, aside from the injector issue, has been actually pretty reliable. Our 2002 Honda Accord that I purchased brand new had a number of issues before 100,000 miles. I think it had 3 warranty claims on it, and I had a couple of repairs here and there, and it wasn't anything major. It was just like basic stuff. But that car at that time was the last year of that body style, and they've been producing it, and it was the 4-cylinder. It was like all basic, but I had a ball joint that went bad under warranty. I had a transmission solenoid go bad under warranty. I had a axle seal that went bad under warranty. What else did I have? Might be it. And then out of warranty, I ended up having to do a couple other things that were minor, like suspension related. And this car here did not live an easy life. It was on gravel roads and salt 6 months out of the year. So the CRV has held up well mechanically, as far as, items breaking, except for the injectors. The only thing I am disappointed in is the body. The body panels, I'm fighting rust at a level that I wasn't fighting with the Accord. And the Accord body panels were good. It had a nice, good, solid paint inside and out with the clear coat. This doesn't have it, and the doors are rusting quickly. I had a nick on the back tailgate that has turned into rust bubbles. So Honda, chinsed out a little bit on their body stuff, and that's a little disappointing, but I guess we'll continue to fight it with underbody treatments of fluid film and, trying to slow it down. So that is it for this video. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel.